Hey everyone, Praveen here, and I wanted to share with you my principles for building a financial model. I want to start with what I view as the two most important characteristics of a financial model. One, it should be accurate, and two, it should be easily auditable. The accurate part is obvious. Let me talk about easily auditable. Assume that this Excel model that you build will outlast you and be used to make important decisions by people who have no access to you. They should be able to pick up your model, get up to speed quickly, change inputs, and use the output with high confidence. So build your financial model with that person in mind. With that, let's get into the 10 principles and let's see if we can do this in under 10 minutes. Principle number 1, always get it audited. No matter how confident you are in your Excel or how simple you think it is, there is a chance you may be missing something. Always get it audited, not only for accuracy but also simplicity. For example, if I were auditing your model, I'd tell you that, hey, in this particular section, you tried to do too much at once. It took me a while to figure out what all was going on. Why don't you break it up into 2 sections and label each section well? Principle number 2, build it cleanly the first time. I'm a strong believer in this. Make it look good throughout the process. That means getting your columns right, having well-defined rows and sections, having the right cell colors to cleanly delineate between inputs and formulae, all the way down to even getting your borders right. Don't try to rush through the building phase of the financial model and then come back to clean it up later. Build it slowly and carefully and cleanly upfront. The odds are that it'll be the most accurate output and also ultimately the fastest way to build it. Remember the principle: slow is smooth and smooth is fast. That definitely applies to building financial models. Principle number 3, embed the source. Your Excel should be self-sufficient. If there is source data from which the rest of the model sits downstream, have that source data in the Excel as a separate sheet. And try not to change or add any analytics into that source sheet. You have other sheets to do that in. Principle number 4, link. Don't copy paste. Link your formulae to the source data. This sounds obvious, but sometimes the source data is quite large and you want to have a light Excel file. There is a temptation to just run analytics on the source data, take the output of that, make that the input of your main financial model. But if you do that and you end up making a mistake in the first step, it's not going to be auditable in the second step. My suggestion is, to the extent possible, link to the source data instead of copy pasting. Principle number 5, minimize the number of sheets. One of my favorite approaches to building a financial model is to have assumptions in one sheet, calculations in the second sheet, and any output such as graphs in a third sheet. You can accomplish a lot with just these 3 sheets and maybe 1 or 2 sheets for source data. Remember that it's generally easier to scroll within a sheet than toggle across sheets. So try to keep the number of sheets in your model to a minimum. Number 6, have logical columns. Think about what makes most sense from a comprehensibility viewpoint. Time, for example, is usually well represented in columns because you view it linearly from near term to long term. The different products or business lines you're modeling out can be rows. You can have hundreds or even thousands of rows depending on how granular your model is. Remember that it's generally easy to scroll up and down a sheet, so more rows is okay. But it's generally harder to follow by scrolling left and right. Let's talk about column integrity here. If your Excel has several sheets, say you're modeling out different subsidiaries of a conglomerate, try to get the columns in one sheet to be the same as the columns in another sheet. Say that projections for the year 2023 are in column C of one sheet. By ensuring that 2023 is always column C across the other sheets as well, you can easily add up the different column C's across different sheets to get to consolidated financials. And for the auditor, if there's a reference to a column B or a column D somewhere, that can quickly highlight an error. One last suggestion about rows and columns. Use freeze panes early and well. It's a big time saver both while building and while auditing, and of course also while using. the model. Principle number 7, separate assumptions and label well. I like to have my assumptions in one sheet and use as many words as I need to describe what that input is. And I also try to include a rationale or a source as well, so that the decision maker years from now doesn't have to wonder, hey, where did he get this from? Why did he assume this? And call this OCD, but some of the best modelers I've met are religious about their cell colors. They have distinct highlight colors for assumptions, historical data, formulae, and totals. Principle 8. One step at a time, please. Your model is not about how much complexity you can manage in one cell or one section. Break it up. If you're going to do A plus B times C minus D, just have those as separate sections and label each step well. It's okay, I don't mind going through a lot more rows as long as I can understand each step pretty quickly. And in general, the more complex you try to make any one cell or section, the higher your chances are for an error. Principle 9. Know a few functions well. 90+% of all the formulae I've ever used are one of the following. Basic arithmetic ones such as sum and product, SUMIF, VLOOKUP, index match, maximum and minimum. You can achieve a lot with just those, but know them well. And number 10, make your Excel dynamic and fast. There are 3 parts to this. Part A, pivots are faster but inferior. If you're just looking for an immediate answer based on source data without building a model, fine, just use a pivot table. But if you really want to be able to change inputs around and see how the output changes, don't rely on pivots. Build a table and link it using formulae. And in general, never link to a pivot. Part B, avoid circular references. I know it's inevitable in some financial models, but using circular references stops your Excel from being dynamic. You have to click save or another button just to get your model to refresh. You don't want to be in a situation where you changed your input and think your Excel updated, but it actually didn't. More dynamic means less chance for error. Try to avoid circular references. Part C, limit data tables. They're a very useful tool for scenario analysis, but they do make an Excel heavy and often slow it down. Alright, let's recap. In your next financial model, get it audited, build it cleanly, embed the source, link, don't copy paste, minimize the number of sheets, have logical columns, separate assumptions and label well, follow one step at a time, master a few functions, and make your Excel dynamic and fast. If you stick to these 10 principles, the odds are that your model is accurate and easily auditable. Thank you so much. Would love to get your feedback in comments, and if you found this content helpful, do like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.